karanga ana te pū tātara ki a tātou, kei te haramai, 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 haramai ki te pōnei. Ka tīmata tātou I runga I te karakia. Anei rā te karakia. Te tū tātou. Please stand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. If you know the karakia, please join in with me. Just to set our spiritual tone for the evening, which is lovely. Ko te karakia, ko te tōroa tīhoi. Toro e, tēnei te ara. Tūtū wai, neke atu ki te taitapa. Toro atu ngā parirau. Kia kaha ki te rere. Kia kaha ki te rere. Rongo hia te hau. Rongo hia te hau. Uaki e. Topa ke I ronga. Topa tonu e. Kia rere e. Kia whakamaua, kia tīna. Haumi e, hui e. Taiki e. Kia ora tātou e noho. Thank you for that. Thank you for those who joined in. We are on a journey, we are getting there. Nō reira, he honore ki te tū I mua I a koutou I tēnei pō, he honore ki te mihi atu ki a tātou katoa. Whaia te I te kahurangi, ki te tūhoho koe, me he maunga teitei. Basically means, hey bro, if you want to bow to something, make sure you bow to something that's worthwhile. Like a big mountain. Kia ora. In other words, aim for the best. That's straight out of the business school's strategy plan, if you didn't know that. Tihe mauri ora, tihe mauri ora, tihe mauri ora. Behold the essence of life, behold the essence of life, behold the essence of life. Tuatahi he mihi ki tā atua. A tuarua, rātou, kia haere ki te pō. Haere ko atu I tā rai. Nō reira, tātou te honga ora, kua tai mai I te pō nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So we pay our respects to those who have passed away. We always bring with us those people. They never leave us, they are with us. And we farewell them, we greet them, and we acknowledge their passing on to the far off lands, wherever they may be. He mihi ki a koe e anaru, te manu kura piri ko te mea tua rua. He mihi ki a koe. Nō reira, rauranga tira mā, me ngā manu hiri tuarangi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei kokanga o te whare wānanga ko Waipapa Taumatarau. O te ingoa o tēnei kokanga, he manga tau hoko. So, those of you who are important people, rauranga tira, the hundreds of important people, welcome here tonight. Welcome here to this corner of the university, this corner which we call he manga tau hoko. Nō reira, ki ngā mana whenua, o te rohi nei ko Ngāti Whātua, tēnā koutou katoa. So to the local iwi, Ngāti Whātua, or Ōrākei, we acknowledge you and we greet you, and there may be some of you here amongst us this evening, so we won't ever forget you. Nō reira, kia ora koutou katoa. E mihi nui ki a koutou I tēnei pō whakahirahira. E pō whakanui I te whakatūtuki o te tohu ahorangi e tō tātou hoaranga tera Alex Sims. A warm welcome to you all on this special evening, an evening to celebrate the achievement of professorship by our dear friend and colleague Alex Sims. Ko Alex he tangata e tautoko ana I ngā tino pukinga o te ao Māori, ka whai ana I ona tikanga I ngā wā katoa, titiro atu, ki ngā whakaahua I mua I a koutou. He aha ngā mea, he kina, He kai ngākau mō te Māori, koina he tohu mō tona hia ki te tautoko i ngā tangata Māori, ngā iwi Māori katoa o te motu. Nō reira, ki a koe, e Alex, he mihi, he mihi, he mihi. Nō reira, ari ko te nākau, ki te tai mai i tēnei hui o te pōnei. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tihei Māori ora. Once again, behold the essence of life. Ka nui te mihi, ka ora te ao Pākahi, ka ora hoki te ao Māori, I roto I te ao Pākehā. So, may the business school live on forever and ever, and may the business world live on forever and ever, and inside that business world, may the Māori business world live on and on forever. Nō reira, tātira, koina, tāhuri, I've finished now. That's all there is from me. I'm going to hand over to Anaru. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Good evening, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests and friends. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you to this evening's inaugural professorial lecture by Professor Alex Sims. It's really wonderful to see so many familiar faces in the room. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Andrew Patterson. I'm one of 2 Deputy Deans of the Faculty of Business and Economics. Inaugural professorial lectures have a long-standing tradition in academia, and indeed it marks a significant milestone in an academic career. It's a rite of passage that we take very seriously and we honour at our university. Now allow me to introduce you to Professor Sims. Alex started as a lecturer in the Department of Commercial Law in the year 2000 after completing her Master of Commercial Law in the department. Her research has 3 areas. They are intellectual property, particularly copyright law, consumer law, and various aspects of blockchain. Recently, Alex has brought 2 of these areas together in her work on the right to repair. They are intellectual property and commercial law. She believes in the need for research to be understood by the public and policymakers, and also for academics to provide comments on news events. To achieve these aims, Alex regularly writes opinion pieces and appears in the media, including as a tech commentator on Radio New Zealand. In case you're wondering, her next appearance will be at 11 AM on this Thursday. Alex's teaching, like her research, is also very broad. She teaches on a range of topics and in different programs from stage 1 all the way through to postgraduate. And this year alone, you might be interested that she is teaching on the BCom core and Business 112, which is a multidisciplinary course, an elective course on intellectual property and innovation in the commercial law undergraduate major, part of a postgraduate course in the Masters of Bioscience Enterprise, and a course on technologies and compliance in the Master of Information Governance program. I admit to being biased positively in favour of the Master of Information Governance program. I teach in it myself, but I know that Alex does a wonderful job in that program. There's not enough time really for me to go through all of the achievements and contributions that Alex has made to the faculty and to the university, but some highlights do include being part of the team that created the Business School Women's program, which began in 2011 and is still going strong, driving the creation of the Department of Commercial Law's Visiting Scholar program and its annual student prize giving. More recently, Alex has demonstrated her proactive nature in insisting that there was an urgent need early in 2022 for wide faculty engagement and discussions around the impact of generative AI and ChatGPT in particular. We certainly remember that time period, don't we? She foresaw the impact of Gen AI would have on assessments including tests, exams, and other assignments. Alex co-organised a wānanga on assessments in generative AI and made many presentations both within the faculty and outside of the subjects. In the spirit of collaboration, she freely shared her adapted assessments, so ChatGPT proof assessments for others across the university, for others to learn from, which is very, very important at that time, given that she's an expert in the area. And of course, true to form, she engaged in writing some opinion pieces for the media on generative AI and assessments and the future of work. I just wanted to say that as we listen to this lecture this evening, let us not only absorb the knowledge being shared, but also appreciate the journey of perseverance, dedication, and passion that has led to this moment, Alex. Let us be inspired to pursue our own paths of inquiry with the same fervour and commitment. And with that, I hand you over to Professor Alex Sims. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou. Welcome everyone for coming here, and it's great to see so many people from all sorts of different walks of life, many over the years that I've interacted with. Subtitle: An Unorthodox and Accidental Academic. Unorthodox because more than one person has said that about me, and probably other terms as well. And the congratulations messages have been really interesting. A lot of well-deserved and about time. But two stand out in particular. And now, I know I should have asked the people who sent me the messages beforehand, but as we'll see, it's always better to seek forgiveness than ask for permission. And I just say that both are academics at this university, and they were in different faculties and not in this faculty. So the first message was, as we know, it often takes this institution a long time to do the right thing. But this was my first time applying for promotion, so it's my fault for not applying earlier. And the second message was, well-deserved Alex, being a prophet/visionary is never easy. Keep challenging the status quo, you're an inspiration to many. So I think, as some people will know, that challenging the status quo is accurate. But I don't go far enough for some people. So someone else sent me a message this last week, actually said, congratulated me, and then said, I hope you'll be able to be a bit more outspoken about a certain issue in my new position. I'm thinking, I can't win. But I'm not a prophet or a visionary. But what I am is a systems thinker. And so systems thinking, as I've got the definition here, and so, you know, for me, systems thinking means seeing how the world is working and then trying to put it into context in the current system, make change that way. Now, I wish I could just walk past things and ignore them, but I can't. I'm always thinking, that could be changed for the better. But what I have learned is not to tell people that. They don't like it. They really don't like it. So I just shut up and be quiet. I also listen to lots and lots and read very, very widely from all sides of the political debate, from history to all sorts of things, when things are being censored, of course. And so part of the issue now is that there's no source that you can rely on that's always accurate. So even the so-called mainstream media get things wrong quite often. So what we need is critical thinking, which I try to get students to engage in, not very successfully. So, so only an orthodox title. This may be a bit unorthodox, this talk. And also, because part of my sort of thing with teaching is to get people to think, that's what I'll be doing here. Now, Banksy. So I'll just show one video. And this is a video I show to students quite often. And I show it at the beginning, just to show people that, that law depends. I mean, law does depend. In fact, I get told off for saying law depends. And sometimes there are some clear rules, but even when there are some clear rules, you may not want to follow them. So, if this works okay, I did sort this out before. So, it's a 2-minute clip. So, this involves Banksy. So, if you don't know, Banksy is the very famous pseudonymous artist in the US, in the UK. Should work.
Not a typical lunchtime at Bridge Farm Primary. A 14-foot Banksy original in the playground. He snuck in over half-term. It was 7-year-old Charlie who wrote to Banksy to tell him pupils had named a house after the Bristol-born artist.
What did you think when you came into school this morning and saw that on the wall?
Really amazed.
Amazed?
Yeah, 100,000,000% yes. Really shocked.
What's your message to Banksy for doing this for the school?
Thank you so much for this really good picture.
Well, the caretaker found this letter stuck to a gutter pipe when he turned up this morning. Inside, a handwritten letter from Banksy in which he says, "Thanks for naming a house after me. If you don't like the artwork I've done, feel free to add stuff. I'm sure the teachers won't mind," he says. And then at the end, a message. "Remember, it's always easier to get forgiveness than permission. Much love, Banksy."
Teachers would normally be warning children against trespass and vandalism, but they say this artwork is inspirational and Banksy was kind of invited. Of course, it's also worth a lot of money, but the school doesn't intend to sell.
A child with a burning tyre, it's not necessarily what you'd expect to see on a playground wall.
I think you have to interpret art how you interpret art. So the symbolism in it, I guess, is for other people to work out. We just like the fact that we have a Banksy in the school.
The man who found it was rather less impressed when he opened up this morning.
I mean, normally you'd be clearing off graffiti, wouldn't you?
Yes, so I was a bit annoyed when I seen that on my wall, thinking that's going to have to come off, but then it was like, okay, there's a Banksy in the corner. Right, let's get on the phone into the head.
Now the school intends to cover Banksy's present with protective plastic to stop it being ruined by other graffiti artists. Oh, the irony. John Kay, BBC News, Bristol.
Okay, that gets them thinking, okay? I won't go through the actual law here, I don't have enough time. But, I mean, very quickly with the law, if the property owner consents in New Zealand, then it's not, there's been no criminal action there. So it looks to me like there's retrospective consent. Now, it's a very good thing the caretaker didn't follow his normal rules of wiping that off and removing the Banksy. And there's nothing worse than people that follow the rules 100% of the time. Okay? There's always exceptions, as this one shows. Now, most of us know within this university or other organisations, there are rules that must be followed and rules that you don't really need to follow. It took me a few years to work out what rules, so now I know. So, in the beginning, okay. Now, it's a bit of a custom for people who have a bit of their sort of childhood and stuff, which I'm going to do, take the luxury of doing it. Now, I was born in Kent. I wasn't born there, but Kent is famous for its hops. And I'm the eldest of three. And I think there was something to birth orders. And my father was English, and unfortunately he can't be here because he died a few years ago. And my mother, who is here tonight, is a New Zealander. And she had gone to London, as many people did, for their OE, but she went on a boat, now they fly. And she ended up staying in London. And just on my New Zealand family, I've forgotten how many generations, but my mother's about fifth generation on both sides of her family. And my father was always very ambitious, but he was from a very, 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 very poor working class family. So he had far more opportunities in New Zealand because he left school when he was 15. And I do remember him regaling the stories, or my mother telling us that my mother grew up on a farm, and she was saying they're bored with eating mutton for breakfast, and my father just couldn't believe his ears because mutton was, for him, would be once a year type of thing. That's the difference between the two countries. So, anyway, my parents were three small children, left England when I was 5, and came back, settled in Auckland. And she's a bit more on history. My mother had gone to Teachers Training College in Ardmore, so she was a teacher, did go back later in life to get a BA, actually came back to Auckland for part of it. And also on my mother's side, come from a very long line of farmers. In fact, Shepherd, one of our family names, and also teachers as well. So if I'd been born 20 years earlier, I probably would have been a teacher rather than an academic. Well, I am a teacher, so, so I'm continuing the tradition. Now, fast forward a generation, there was never a doubt that I'd go to university, but it wasn't that straightforward, which I'll go through. Now, my parents ran a series of businesses in, where were we? We'll get to school in a second. In Auckland, started with garden furniture. My mother had a cafe on Queen Street, and then it turned into office furniture and designed and manufactured into Papa near Onehunga, some people may know. I used to work in my father's business, my parents' business, and I still remember the smoko room when people were allowed to smoke at work. Not allowed to do that now. And I still often see the furniture around Auckland, so that's what, 40 odd years later, and it still was very well made furniture. One of the influences of my father on me was he was always into tech, so which I do quite a bit, and he always had to have the latest tech. And I remember in the mid-1990s he had one of the first mass-produced Casio cameras. He was very proud of it. Remember, it would cost £1,000 and the pictures were terrible. But that's always the case with new technology. It's always bad at the beginning, then it gets better and surpasses the technology it was going to do. And also another feature of that is technology takes a long time. So I remember in the mid-1990s, he had an excellent website, okay? A really good website in the 1990s. Well, most businesses in New Zealand, until very recently, didn't have websites, you know? So this, well, when COVID came along, it was a bit of an issue. So it takes a long time to come along. Now, quickly on schooling. Now, I went to Michael Park School, Rudolf Steiner School in Ellerslie, and very different. Very different to the sort of mainstream schools. We called our teachers by their first name, we had no uniforms, and you could see from the buildings they were a lot different. And I do remember again, my father was complaining, because these were expensive buildings. He said, why can't you just put these cheap prefabs up? And, you know, well, these are still looking good 40 years later, and they were all wood, they were beautiful. Now, Michael Park was good, but it turned out, I got told recently, that I basically gave the teachers PTSD. And so one of the teachers was talking to them at a reunion, and she said that the other teachers basically feared teaching me, but she enjoyed teaching me. I don't know why. All I can think is I asked questions about the content and I got bored, because it was easy. Now, the other interesting thing, and I wished I'd known at the time, was she also said that there were two students during her whole career, for about 40 years, that she regarded as geniuses, and it was me and someone else. Okay? She never told, I never knew this. I mean, I knew it was bright, but I didn't know it was that bright. And in fact, I didn't even get into university when I wanted to, so we'll come back again to that. Now, I just want to do a bit of a riff on that genius bit and explain 3 paradoxes, because this is about law and other paradoxes. So the first one is it nature or nurture? Now, if you haven't read this book, it's excellent. It's called The Geography of Genius. And what his argument was is it's culture and location. And so there's places that around the world, like ancient Greece, Florence, Silicon Valley, and other places, that it's the geography that makes it. Okay? It's not the people themselves. And they have things like, there's people that are a bit outsiders, and they discuss things. You know, if you all get together and all have to have consensus, well, that doesn't really work. So you need, it's a very good book to read on that. Another one is that IQ is not enough. So if you haven't read Outliers, please read it. It's a really, really good book by Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the stories that relates in that book is a longitudinal study in California where they took these kids with IQs higher than Einstein. Okay? And it was the premise, or the thesis was these kids at 11 were so brilliant that they are going to lead the United States. Longitudinal study, and then when they went back and they found that, well, there was a lot of them that actually ended up unemployed, okay, even. Okay? And they're thinking, how can this occur? And it turned out that it was socioeconomic status. Okay? That's it. That's it. So if you're very bright but you come from a very poor family, your chance of success is very low. So it's not to do with that. So, and then another quick one is also the fixed versus growth mindsets. So, you know, it's really sort of dangerous to label someone as, for example, being bright. Probably can't read this, but you can get someone with a fixed mindset is that they want to look smart, so they avoid challenges, they give up easily, no point working, you're either bright or you're not. They don't take on feedback. They feel threatened if other people are successful, and they don't achieve what they could. But the growth mindset is you embrace the challenges, you persist, you see effort as a path to mastery, you learn from criticism, and you find lessons, inspiration from success of others, and you do better. So it's not where you start, it's your attitude. And at this university and other places, we label people. And I don't think that's very helpful. And also they've done studies on this where they've looked at children, they've done so-called tests on them, and they've said to the teachers, oh, these kids are bright. And they weren't. They were the same as everyone else. And then a year later they go back, and they're performing much better because the teachers treated them differently. So anyway, that's just to think about. Now, back to schooling. Might skip some of this, otherwise I'll run out of time. But it was interesting. Actually, one I will do one. I was going to do 3 drawbacks, I didn't do one. We didn't have exams because we were non-competitive, so we don't want exams. I'm quite competitive, so it wasn't good. So it was all internally assessed, and we didn't do bursary back in the day for people that are older. We did sixth form certificate, and it was just it was a nightmare. I like tests, didn't do an exam, because I didn't do any work because it was too easy. I didn't get particularly good marks. And because we hadn't done bursary, I had to apply for university, and I didn't bother applying because, of course, I didn't want to go to university. Come the next year, I wanted to go, and they wouldn't let me in. So I then went overseas. Actually, this slide, I missed out one of my things. We lived quite a way away from the university. It was Wellesley, we lived in Herne Bay, back when Herne Bay was really, really cheap. It was either Herne Bay or South Auckland, which seems bizarre, but that literally was the case. And as soon as I was 15, I got my licence. Because my parents had to get them from one part of Auckland to another. And this was my parents' car that they bought new in England. And they brought it over because at the time, the 70s, cars were insanely expensive in New Zealand. And you couldn't even buy them, even if you had the money, because there was import restrictions. So I drove that around Auckland. We had these like chicanes where you went to slow down, and I worked out the optimum speed for going through, and the back would fishtail out. No, I never had an accident. I do remember a couple of friends getting out of the car and refusing to go. But anyway, so back. I think we've done the schooling. Okay, now what about after 7th form? Couldn't get into university, so I then went to Sydney. This isn't the actual flat, but it was similar. So I was in one of those there for about 6 months or so, working in hospitality, and then I went to London, because my parents by then had moved to London, so I stayed with them, of course, as you do. During London, I was there for a couple of years, and one of the places I worked was a wine bar in Fleet Street called Albino, and that's a picture of it at night. It was quite interesting to work there. And this actually leads into my choice of degree, because I was trying to work out when I was preparing this, why did I want to become a lawyer or to study law? And one of them was, this place, it was mainly lawyers that came in, because it was just down the road from the temple. It was on Fleet Street. There was also, I was like watching legal dramas. I thought they were interesting. And one of the people that worked there, she was a lawyer from New Zealand doing her OE, because this is how impressionable young people are. So, yep, had to do law. Now, I couldn't get into Auckland because my marks were hopeless. So I ended up in this place, in Otago. This is called the Hocken Building, now called Richardson Building. Now, just on that, the story from this slide that it's taken from is a story from the Otago Daily Times about the fact that the Hocken Building had just been given, the high status to the Historic Places Trust, okay? And it was one of the youngest buildings. Now, the paradox, because remember we're doing law and other paradoxes, is that we know what beauty is, don't we, as people? But the architects here thought that they just designed an ugly building. And in fact, the trust, the Historic Places Trust, acknowledged this, because in the story it says, the Hocken Building was a critical success with the architectural profession, but public resistance to its particular aesthetic has not greatly diminished over time. I actually wanted to be an architect. Actually, I didn't say that when I was young, but I was hopeless at physics, probably because of the teachers. I blame the teachers. But I've since been told you don't actually have to be any good at physics for that. Now, this picture, I didn't play rugby, back then, in the 1990s, not many women or girls played rugby, but it is a picture of, I think it's quite a good picture to represent something. Now, when I had my first law tutorial, so I had, 2 or 3 weeks of studying lectures, reading some cases and things, because we had to read cases, we didn't read textbooks or anything. I worked out, and I said to the tutor, I said, the judges are just moving the goalposts. They're manufacturing it and getting the outcome that they want. I should have stopped doing law. If I could work that out in 3 weeks, that this is just a farce. But I kept on going. But I was a bit quiet. I wasn't sort of challenging the lecturers at all in law. I just kept my head down. Now, just on this, you don't have to be a genius or anything to work this out. For example, I don't know if I came across this case, but I'll just go through it very quickly. Now, this is a very well-known case that we teach to our students sometimes, or when we had a stage 1 course we did. Now, Lord Denning, who is in the Court of Appeal, his first sentence, okay, so before we get to it, what this case was about was, it was about a cricket green, like this, a village green, and the balls would go, and the sixes going across and hitting people and buildings and things. And so the plaintiff wanted to close it down and get down to it. Okay. Now, this is what the judge started his judgment with. I wonder who won the case. Okay? Yes. Okay, but to be, all joking aside, most judges are a bit more subtle than that. Now, there's a really good podcast series called More Perfect from the US, and it goes through Supreme Court cases. Now, I don't really like law, but I'll listen to this. That's why I do mainly non-law now. But so if you look at the political thicket, and what it was about a case where the judges, they decide the case according to their ideological beliefs. And this is what happens in law. The judges decide according to their beliefs. And it turned out that I think one of the judges ended up having a heart attack, and the other one had a mental breakdown, because they were under such pressure from different people to decide it different ways. So anyway, listen to that one. It's quite interesting, and it might sort of shatter your illusions about law. Now, coming back to university, now just on this very, very quickly, is that this is back in University of Otago. To get into the RLB, you had to do 2 law courses, and you chose other courses that you could do. Now, I made an error while filling in the forms. This was all paper forms. We didn't have computers back then. And I meant to enroll in philosophy for 2 courses, and I ended up in psychology. They both start with P, but I don't know. And so I didn't know how to change, so I ended up with them. And now, I'd never done an exam before going to university. And I remember distinctly the first exam, and this was full semesters, full years. We didn't have semesters. So full year, multi-choice was fine, and then when I had to do a written one, I just panicked, and I couldn't remember anything, and I just wrote. Luckily, I prepared very well, and I actually got an A+. That was my first and last A+. Next other psychology one, I got an A, so very good. Now, normally you'd be invited to do honours, because you did well. But I think I filled in a survey when I said that psychology was a load of rubbish, so they asked me. So there's a bit of a pattern occurring here. Also, I did an education paper because people said it was really easy. I got my second to lowest mark ever in that. And I also did accounting because that was meant to be easy, and I got a really bad mark for that as well. And I teach accountants, but luckily I don't teach them accounting. The other thing, and this is a bit of a paradox, is remember I had to do 2 law courses. One of them I actually got an A+ for. The other one I got a C-, which is bizarre. I mean, how could you? And that was enough to get through, but it was just weird. But anyway, I got that. Now, my second year at Otago, I met my partner Michael, and we are still together, and 2 children, both at university. My daughter Beth is in her final year down in Massey doing fashion design. Wellington, and my son George, who's here tonight, is in the second year at AUT doing communications. So I'm just jumping out the timeline, and this is a family portrait. So my daughter is there, she's a headless man, and my son is a creepy robot. So that was a motet. And in fact, the family takes fancy dress very seriously. And that was so good, her headless man, that they thought she was a member of Motat staff, and she didn't win. Now the next year, we're going to make it better. So she was a headless woman, but not just that, she did it, I have a photo, so that her head was like this, crazy. So it looked like she was carrying her severed head. And she should have won. I mean, when you walk down, everyone was stopping and taking photographs, you know, with her because it was so good. But the family joke is when it came, she made the finals, and she was beaten by a tree. So luckily she was a bit older. This was 2012, so she was about 12, so that was okay. If she had been younger, that would have been, you know, traumatic. Now quickly, after university, I went back to London because I didn't get into professionals, so profs. So, and then I dragged my partner Michael with me, so he dutifully came along, which was good, otherwise we wouldn't be together. So another 2 years, again, working. I was just working and actually working with my parents now. And then I decided that I wanted to come back, and I applied. I actually applied for the LLM first of all, and I got in. So I had a law degree right now. But when I was looking, it was things like law of animals. And then I saw this poster with the income law. It looked much more exciting, and I'd done lots of commercial law. So I transferred into that one, which I thought was a bit better. Before I go on this one. Now, okay, so I did that, and then also the income law was like a taught masters. So some of you will know what a taught masters is. Instead of doing a big sort of dissertation or a thesis, you do courses. And back then it was slightly different because we had to do like 6,000 word assignments, but I went over, I think my longest was 16,000 words. Now you wouldn't be able to do that, but I was sort of encouraged to do that. And then the head of department said, "Do you want a job?" I went, "Yep." And he said, "Look, I don't know whether it will be a tutor or a lecturer or part-time or full-time." So I didn't know. I turned up on January and I opened it and it was a full-time lecturer for 1 year. Now, you're not allowed to do 1 year contracts now, okay? But the then head of the department did that all the time, and it's a really good idea because you get to see what people are like. And it was getting near the end of the first year, and we had bought our first house in Kingsland. Now this looks a bit flasher. Kingsland was a bit rough in the year 2000, a lot rougher than that. And we said, "Do I have a job?" And yes, I had a job. I had another 2 year job, which again was quite unusual. And then the head of department, they then manufactured 2 jobs, one for me and someone else. And we didn't know that, but we applied for it and we got it. And coincidentally, the other person to get it, he's also been promoted to professor this year. So it's taken us a while to get here. So, this is actually, this image. When my children were young, I lied to them, and I said that a princess lived at the top of that tower. And they believed me for a long, long, long time. Yes. Now, just another sort of paradox with jobs, especially as I'm always telling students that it's the networks and the connections they make at university which are the most important thing, much more important than grades. And as by way of sort of evidence of that, my partner Michael, he got his job this way because he'd gone for a job at Datacom and failed to get the job. And then a friend of mine from school, he then said, "Well, what about this person? There's a 3-month contract coming up. Why don't you just try him out?" And the manager goes, "Oh, well, might as well try." Again, no, doesn't work. And then by the end of the 3 months, again, we were nervous, was there a job? And yes, there was, and he was there for the next 20 odd years. But again, it's because those trials, you can test someone that you wouldn't normally test out. And the irony is, when that manager left, he then said that Michael was the best person he'd ever hired. And he forgot that he'd actually rejected him for a job. But we didn't point that out to him at all. So we've got that. Now, jumping a bit. So, this is an old map of the university. Okay, so some of you may remember it. And business school, where's business school? There's nothing there because it wasn't there. Okay, this was in 2000, wasn't there? But the business school, as a faculty, was all over the show. So for some reason, this actually came up. I didn't colour this. This was actually online. I went to the Wayback Machine, and so everything in red is the business school. And so because of this, because we were so dispersed, I actually knew far more people outside the faculty than inside the faculty. And our then head of department made sure of that. And he had a saying that the mountains are high and the emperor is far away. So the emperor was the dean. So Barry, I think this was, yeah. that was what Ian used to say. Yes.
It's Mr. Old Coral Hall.
Is it? Oh, okay. No, it's fine. Now, where we were up there. So we're at the sort of the farthest bit. We're now, and law is now in that building. Now, why I'm showing you this is because my first ever lecture was in B28, which is there. And that, at the time, was the biggest lecture theatre in the university. It was over 400 people. This was before the business school was built. And so my first ever lecture was to Common Law 101, over 400 students. It was on contract law. It's burned in my brain. And I was quite nervous because I'd done tutorials, which are fine, but 400 people in a room, it's a lot of people. Now, but back then I was quite nervous, and I had prepared extensively. I had completely written out notes, which I now would never do for a class. I have done some notes for this one, so don't forget. So, had everything, and had it all sorted out, and when I went to get everything out, I suddenly realised my notes aren't there. And so, it was like rabbit in the headlights, and I was thinking, what do I do? Do I run? It's over 5 minutes each way, and so I'll be late, and I went, no, I didn't run. Luckily, I was, again, a bit like that psychology exam. I was over-prepared, and plus I had the benefits of overhead projector with transparencies. Now, some of you won't know what that is. So this was state of the art. So what we would do is we had these transparent sheets, and you'd photocopy them and put them up. And so you wouldn't be able to see them from the back of the room with these huge theatres, but we used that, those things. So that was okay. And, but that's actually is luxury, because I remember when I was at law school, we didn't even have that. All it was a person talking, and we were writing. And it was quite funny, because I'm not the best speller, and then I would be writing up all the names of these cases, and then trying to find them later, and they bore no resemblance at all to it. I mean, they were just doing it to... They could have at least written something up on the board, but no. And so now you get students that are complaining about having to handwrite. I don't have any sympathy. But I can't say that. Because now, okay, so we've done that. Now, outside the university, one of the reasons why there's quite a broad range of people here is because and one of the reasons why I was promoted to professor is because of outside activities. Now, I'm just going through a few of them that I've done over the years, but not all of them. And also, just a bit of fun, I've used the Wayback Machine to get pictures of websites as they were at the time. Now, I must admit that some of my external stuff came at a detriment to my family. So I do remember one time when my son was small and I was reading him books. By that stage, my daughter did not want me to read her books. She's always been rather independent. Anyway, So I'd read books to my son, and if I had to go to a meeting, because they were all in person, I'd set an alarm. So it would go off and I knew I had to get up and then go out. Now, I remember one time my son, who, I don't know how old he was, 4 or 5, and he said, you know, Mum, do you go to a meeting tonight? And I said, no. He goes, good, you could read me more. Which was sort of, but then I guess, you know, he probably forgotten about that now. He nodded. But anyway, there's that. But at least, you know, I did that. Now, my first thing, actually working for, being a volunteer for Plunkett, this is really sort of early 2000s website, deliberately. I ended up, I don't know how, I can't remember, being on the volunteer committee for the family centres, ended up treasurer, then president, and I must admit, we ended up selling. We were the Plunkett Road, Landscape Road, Mount Eden, and we also sold the one in, Ponsonby as well, to set up a new one that was running the full time, because we had these two that weren't running very well. Another thing, Legal Research Foundation, one of the roles there was co-organising the annual writing awards. When I got into that role, there were no rules, so I had to write the rules, which caused a few ruckuses, but that's okay. Consumer in New Zealand, because I do believe that academics should be actively involved in practical involvement or knowledge in the areas that they're teaching and researching in. So I did actually ask someone to nominate me for this, to be on the board, and I was there for about 6 years. Part of that was as deputy chair. Now, when I was on Consumer NZ, I was then asked could I be a consumer rep on the telecommunication dispute resolution. And if you don't know about it, it's a really good thing if you've got a dispute with your telco. So, for example, One or that was Vodafone, Spark, is that it's free, okay? Unlike the disputes tribunal where you've got to pay a whole lot of money. But no one knows about it, which is a pity. Also, I ended up on Graham Farmers Market. I go there all the time. Ended up as a secretary because no one else wanted to do that. Blockchain NZ got nominated for that, and that's been really interesting. Again, that industry academic nexus, which has been good. Now, inside the university, again, I've done lots and lots of different roles within the departments, faculty and wider university. But just one thing I do want to quickly go over is stuff I've done with TEU. So this is the union, the main union at the university, and before I get to this one, I started out in the branch committee, ended up being the secretary, then ended up as the women's committee, then the vice president one, and all these different things. And during that, part of it, we had this bitter industrial campaign for about 18 months, and I was on the bargaining committee. And it turned out to be posters. I didn't want them made, but I had them made, and they asked me could they use them, and it's like, well, you've already got them made, so you can but it's a bit disconcerting when I used to go into departments and you see posters. I didn't want to be, but it came in handy later. Now, another thing with the union when I was on it was that we had an endorsements policy. So we have lots of committees at this university, and people run for them. And it was a case of if the union endorses someone, they will get in because union members will vote for them. And I rewrote the policy, and I wanted it so that if there was only one position, only one would endorse one person. But the rest of the committee said, no, we can't do that. We can't pick people. We'll just endorse everybody. And I said, that won't work because if you have other people get in. So, but I left it because they were arguing, fine, you can do what you want. Well, I had the last laugh. 2 years later, they changed it because, of course, it wasn't working properly. Now, just on this also, with this bitter industrial campaign, there was a seat going on in the University Council. And I was asked to put my name forward, and I said, well, I can't do this. And they said, please, can you please do it? And also there was a vote coming up as part of the industrial campaign, and we needed someone to be there, and I worked out that if I got in, I couldn't make that first meeting. But there was someone else who was also running, who was also a union member, and I phoned her up and said, look, I can't make that meeting. So if you can make the meeting, I'll take my name off and you win. And she said no, she couldn't make it, so stayed on and got on council. Which, again, accidentally, because I didn't really mean to get on there. Mind you, I was there for 9 years, but also, again, the endorsement, okay? Because, which I probably wrote, which I didn't intend to help me at all. I also didn't apply for another term, because I don't think people should be in positions for too long. You need that cycling through of people. Yeah, and now, just as part of this industrial campaign, we had these rosettes. In fact, I've got one here, I found it today, which are very subtle. And the process thank you students for supporting staff was that some of the students were wearing these, but they were refused to graduate if they were wearing them. So it was terrible for the university, but I was on council. And so I had one on, and when I went into the room with all the council members, you could tell they were furious. They couldn't say anything. But then, I was sitting in the front row, because that's where the council members sat, and someone was telling me later, because they have cameras, and when the graduates were doing their hands shook, I was sitting there. So it's quite funny. Anyway. Actually, just a fun fact. This guy, Vernon Tarver, he was doing law, and I got called up for jury service last year, and he was one of the lawyers there. And so I had spoken to him for, 12 years, and I was about to go up to the judge saying I knew him, and he said objection, so I had to walk off. Now, another quick thing, we also, at this time of this industrial dispute, about 12, 13 years ago, we brought in the PTF positions. Now, I don't know if anyone remembers, but this flyer was doing the rounds. I won't show, I can send it to you later if you want, Andrew. And I did this, but my name wasn't on it. Okay, just to explain the two. So it was a bit of subversive things. Now, you might think I'm a pain, which I am, but it's not all painful. So one of the things that we did with the TUs, we had a good relationship with like Equity Office and HR. And one of the things that we did was to create a salary sacrifice for early childhood education fees. And I worked out that if my kids went to the university creche, that if it had been operating, I would have saved $10,000 a year. Okay, so it was a lot of money. But by the time we got it up, my kids weren't at creche, but it was never for me. So that was a positive thing, and it's still running today. Now, quickly, research and publications. So I haven't done much. Now, as Andrew said, I've got 3 main areas of research. First one was copyright law. So it's what I started with. Now, the thing with copyright law and intellectual property laws in general is that if there's too much protection, they actually stifle creativity. And blockchain, which I'll get to in a second, and I wrote something on that, because blockchain has developed so quickly because there was no intellectual property rights. Okay? So again, another paradox. Now, also, there's a good, with copyright is meant to protect creators, but it doesn't. And in fact, the first Copyright Act, the statute of Anne 1709 or 1710, depending on how you view it, it was never the artists or the authors that were seeking copyright protection. It was the publishers. And what this slide is about is there is an artist, Dean Harvey, who is a full-time artist, and he wasn't making much money at all. But now, through NFTs, he's actually making a living off them. So you don't need copyright to actually make money. Now, consumer law was my next one, and one of the areas I did was unfair contract terms, and I have a saying that the law is useless, okay? Because we've got these laws, but they're not necessarily followed. So we had this new law that was going to come in, and I thought it's not going to work. And so what I did was I got a student to take a whole lot of contracts and New Zealand contracts and analyse them to see if there had been unfair contract terms in them. And then I got this is before the law came into effect, and after the law, 9 months later, I got another student to look at the same contracts to see whether there had been a reduction in the unfair contract terms. Now, there was a massive number of unfair contract terms before, and then afterwards they'd only been reduced by 10%. So it effectively had very little effect. Now, why did I know it wouldn't have an effect, or not much of an effect? It's because we've got this law, but you can't enforce it. Only the Commerce Commission can. And so I've done a whole lot of work basically arguing that it should be other people that can also enforce it. So with unfair contract terms, it's not just a case of I think it's unfair. There are rules, but I'll just give you a quick couple of examples of unfair contract terms. So say, for example, you enter into a contract for broadband for $80 a month for a 12-month term. And the term in that contract allows the retailer to change the terms and conditions at any time. Okay? That used to be quite common. And say the retailer increases the cost to $140 halfway through, and you can't terminate it early. Well, that means you're stuck paying an extra $60 a month. Another one might be, this is a real one, a term in a gym contract that says even if the gym were to move location up to 12 kilometres away, you still have to pay the membership fees. Okay? So there are examples of unfair contract terms. But at the moment, you can't do anything about it. What you can do is ask the Commerce Commission, and the Commerce Commission hasn't done very much. It's done a little bit. One of the things it has done is work with the hot cards, because it changed like 20 terms because they were just reaching, lots of different laws. So one of the things that, I'm sure it doesn't have to be anyone in this room, but a lot of people, some people think that businesses follow the law, okay? And that even if they're not following the law, someone is actually checking and enforcing the law. Well, no, that often doesn't occur. And so that was an article we wrote on it. Now, MB, the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment, I think questioned the study because it was so bad. And so what it did was it replicated the study. And so I handed over all my work, everything like that. It was checked and it was correct. And then they got a student then to go and find the most recent contract. So it was a couple of years later to see whether there had been some change. Now, we'll do a bit of a thought experiment very quickly. Okay, so you're in business and you hear about a new law, the Unfair Contract Terms law, but you see that no enforcement is happening. And the customers can't challenge the unfair contract terms. Okay, what would you do? Well, if you acted ethically, you'd change your contract, wouldn't you? Yes. Now, do all or most businesses act ethically? I'm always banging on about it, but the short answer is no, they don't. And so when this was repeated, there were more unfair contract terms. Okay? Because why not? And actually my name is at the end, but I didn't do any of the analysis, I just helped write it, so it's there. So my work was clean. And what we also wrote is a piece for the public in this the conversation. Now, another factor, another paradox is that reputation is often more important than law. Okay? So, for example, plagiarism. So if you're an academic and you plagiarise, you can lose your position, but you haven't broken the law. Okay? So that's why law is in business. Yeah. Another quick one is blockchain. I got involved in blockchain right at a time, but basically I listened to 2 podcasts back to back. One was Canadian, one was New Zealand. They were talking about smart contract Ethereum, and I went, oh my God, I've got to do this. And I ended up doing a big report, and I've done a whole lot of other things as well. And then, as part of it, I also did a very belated PhD, which is unusual because normally now you can't even get an academic position without a PhD. Some exceptions. And also, just to make it harder, most of this is not on law, it's on economics. I've never studied economics. Also, I didn't do like historical one. I was doing it as decentralised autonomous organisations were on the rise. When I started doing it, I set up a Google alert for DAOs and decentralised autonomous organisations. There was about a hit every 2 weeks, but now, when I finished, it was like 10 a day. So this whole thing was going on. But that was a useful exercise. I also had the typical thing where one of my main supervisor left, got made redundant, so did someone else come through. So it was a useful learning exercise. Now, very quickly, a couple of this. I put this in the sort of title for this talk. Why are people prepared to pay significant sums of money for digital files which anyone can copy with the right mouse click? Well, perceptions of value, because people are weird. Now, you can buy rare, this guitar for this much. Last year you could, okay? But the same make and model guitar sold, for $2.1 million US dollars. Why? Well, because it was magic. It was magic. It's no different. I mean, you take the two, they're identical. Okay, so perceptions are weird. So the digital art NFTs aren't worthless, even though anyone can copy them, because if you copy it, you don't own it. And ownership is important because people like to own things. We've just seen that with John Lennon's guitar. They want that guitar, not that guitar. And you can show ownership. So, for example, on Twitter, you could show only the owners of certain NFTs could use them on Twitter for their profile pictures. And when you're in the metaverse, only owners will be able to display their NFTs, so you can show that. And there's been a lot of hype over NFTs and stupid amounts of money being paid, but new technology, that normally happens. Now, a common thing, and I'll just finish with 1 minute. I thought it was about technology. But then I think, why do we have technology? Or maybe it's about human flourishing, isn't it? That why we have technology to help us? Now, I'm sort of walking back on a whole lot of things because I've realised, as other people may have out, the technology's not really helping us at the moment. People's mental health and all sorts of things. So what drew me to blockchain in the first place, which was the ability to enforce the law, is now making me really nervous because it may not be a good thing. So I'm being a bit ambivalent over it. It's fine if everything is decentralised and people have control about what they want to do, but the worry is that we may lose control. You won't be able to pay what you want. You may have restrictions imposed on you. For example, you may not be able to book an airline ticket if, for example, your carbon credits allowance has been exceeded. So I will end there. It's a bit of a provocative note. Well, one or two questions, and we have to finish. Do you have any questions? Or?
What are you excited about sinking your teeth into next?
I don't know. Oh no, Andrew mentioned right to repair, so I've been doing a whole lot of that, and I'll keep on doing because that's. I didn't mention it, but I will quickly, and this relates to the software as well, that more and more products are being embedded with software that's preventing people from even using it. So a classic example was, this has just happened last year or two, someone had a Tesla and they wanted to put a tow bar on it, or a hitch, they call it in America, and Tesla didn't have any, so this person then went to a reputable place to get the tow bar installed. And then he phoned up Tesla and said, oh, can you activate the software so I can use it? And they said, no, you can't use it to tow. Printers, for example, they now sell on subscription basis, and if you don't keep on paying the subscription, it stops. And so that's something I've really been interested in, so I'm doing more on that. That's a really big issue for us all. And people have been talking about this for a long time, but it's coming to fruition now. There's a really good book, a novella called Unauthorized Bread. If you read that, it's quite scary. And also, just on that, coming back to copyright law, which was my main area before, is that if you've got someone who has to hack, jailbreak something to fix it or to modify it, up to 5-year prison term in New Zealand. Yeah, which should not be the case. So that's what I'm thinking about. Yeah?
And so one of the things I've observed is that people trying to regulate technology don't really understand it because a lot of them are lawyers who seem very technophobic. So do you think that's an issue and we need to do something about that?
Yes, but also, yes, it'd be good to have different people in the room, but also things move so fast and the legal is so slow, so that's an issue. So I don't know how to get around that. But, so, I think we're good.
Okay, on behalf of the faculty, Alex, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I've got to know Alex a little bit, I suspect you have as well. Certainly, the coverage of paradoxes is very interesting. It was really fascinating to hear about your current interest and where your research might be going into the future as well. So would you care to join me in